So you made it to blue belt. Congratulations. But if you've been around jujitsu for a long enough period of time, you've probably heard of something called the blue belt blues. So maybe you've even seen it happen to somebody, someone who gets their blue belt and then slowly starts drifting away from training. Upper belts even kind of joke about this. They'll say, "All right, now you finally have permission to quit jujitsu. I'll never see you again." But for a lot of students, the experience isn't quitting right away, it's something else. A lot of blue belts go through a phase where they actually feel like they are stopping improving altogether. So training doesn't feel the same as it once did when they were a white belt. Progress feels slower. Sometimes even newer white belts are starting to give them harder rounds than expected. And it can feel like that you've just hit a wall. So in today's video, we are going to talk about why most blue belts stop improving, and most importantly, what you can do about it to stop falling into the same trap. If you're new to the channel, thank you for checking it out. Make sure you're subscribed and turn on the bell icon. That way you never miss a new video whenever it comes out. One thing that's really important to understand before we jump into these problems is that all of them are going to be able to build off of one another. So it's rarely going to be one big mistake or one issue that causes it. So usually it's a small shift that actually stacks together over time. And those small shifts eventually lead to that feeling of being stuck. So everything I'm sharing today actually comes from my 16 years of training and teaching experience. Some of these things I actually experienced myself personally as a blue belt. And then some others are just patterns that I've tended to notice in some of my students over and over again. The first reason blue belts stop improving is pretty simple. They just stop showing up to train as much. And so if you stop training or even slightly reduce your training, it's very natural you're going to slow down your improvement. And this happens a lot because maybe when you were a white belt, everything was so new. You were so excited and you just wanted to train 6 or 7 days a week. So every technique that you learned just felt like a massive step of progress. Even getting smashed during your rolls feels exciting because you're learning so much from every single match. But by the time you have reached your blue belt, usually 2 or 3 years later, life starts to maybe look a little bit different. Maybe you've taken on more responsibilities at work, or you've started a family, or your schedule is just busier than it used to be. So instead of training 6 or 7 days a week, you're now only training maybe 1, 2, or 3 days a week. And that alone will change the rate of your improvement. So I've had students come up to me and say before, "Man, I feel like I was improving so much faster as a white belt and getting so much better." And then when I talk to them, I usually remind them, "Well, yeah, I remember you were in my classes and you were there 6 days a week. Now you only train 2 days a week." So of course, your improvement is going to be slower if you're not training as much. And another thing that happens is that the novelty of jujitsu maybe kind of wears off a little bit because at white belt, everything felt so exciting. Every class is so new. And then at blue belt, some classes really just start to feel routine or kind of going through the motions. And when that novelty fades, the motivation to push yourself can really fade with it. Now, for me personally, this wasn't a massive issue because around this blue belt time, I really started to getting into more of the teaching role, which gave me a new challenge and a new direction for my jujitsu. But for many of my students, this is the first shift that slows down their progress. And once training becomes less consistent, it often leads into our next problem. So when your training volume drops, something else will start to happen. You will start to become more complacent instead of content. And those two things are very different because when you are complacent, you're just basically satisfied with where you're at. So you're happy to show up, to roll, to be a part of the community, but you're really not pushing yourself for growth anymore. Now, to be clear, there is nothing wrong with just enjoying jujitsu casually, but if you are completely shut off to the desire to improve, well, then your progress is naturally going to stall. So what I recommend students do is really focus it on being content at blue belt. So being content means that you're proud of what you have accomplished. You are happy that you've made it to blue belt. You are so excited, but you're open to that next challenge and what you're going to improve next. So you don't have to be the next world champion. You don't have to be the fastest person to black belt. And you don't have to be even the best blue belt in the room. But you still have to keep the mindset of wanting to get a little bit better over time. And a lot of students fall into that complacency because blue belt was a massive goal for you because you worked so hard for years to reach it. And then once you get there, we can kind of relax and then take a breath. And another thing that I see is that students will often look ahead at the purple belt, and that can feel very daunting or far away. So it's just easier not to think about it. They say, I don't want those expectations. But the key is learning how to balance that mindset. So be content with what you have accomplished, but don't close that door on growth completely. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think is the biggest reason you stopped improving as a blue belt? So if you were an upper belt, share with the others down in the comments because people really do get a lot of good takeaways from what you have to say. So the first two issues we just talked about really started to influence maybe how you train as a blue belt, because when that training volume drops and complacency starts to creep in, it's going to usually change the way that you approach this next phase of your development in your jiu-jitsu journey. And that leads directly into this third issue. Blue belts will often still approach their training with a white belt improvement process. Now, what I mean by this is that they are still trying to learn as much as possible and get good at everything as fast as possible. Because at that phase, you know so little. So you just need exposure to techniques and to positions just to build a foundation enough to play the jiu-jitsu game. But by the time that you reach blue belt, your priorities should start to look much different. By now, you should have begun developing strengths and weaknesses of what you have learned. Maybe your guard passing is stronger than average. Maybe your mount controls are a really good strength of yours. And then maybe your guard retention needs a lot of work. So every blue belt is going to have a slightly different profile. But a very common mistake is trying to expand your game endlessly over deepening it. So instead of asking, what else can I learn? Blue belts should really start asking, what areas of my game actually need the most work right now? Maybe it's your guard, maybe it's your passing, or maybe it's to sharpen your escapes. But pick something that's specific and please spend time diving deep into that area. Now, I struggled with this myself as a blue belt because I had started teaching. So I felt like I needed to know everything as fast as possible. And that sounds good in theory, but it actually slowed down my own kind of skill development. If I could go back, I would have spent way more time focusing on one system at a time and developing more depth. Because at blue belt, your development phases start shifting from expanding your game to deepening your game. Now, the last big issue has to do with how blue belts tend to measure their progress. So in jiu-jitsu, we don't really have a clean grading system, right? There's no written exams, there's no scoreboards. So most students end up really measuring their own improvement throughout rolling most of the time. And this is where things can often be very misleading. So a lot of blue belts will say things like, I've been a blue belt for 2 years now, and I still get dominated by the exact same people. I still feel like I'm a day one blue belt. But that feeling often comes from expecting some big leap in your performance that honestly, no one promised you. You expected improvement to bring sudden domination. But improvement at blue belt is usually way more subtle than that. So maybe your guard retention just lasts a little bit longer. Doesn't mean you're going to stop everybody from passing. Maybe your mount escapes are a little bit sharper. That doesn't mean you're going to escape every brown belt's mount. Maybe you just making fewer mistakes in bad positions is all that's happened. But if the only way you measure success is, did I get this many taps today or dominate this person today? Then you're going to miss a lot of the real progress metrics that are happening. This is another reason why you should be focused on a specific area of your game and why that's so helpful. Because if you spend a month improving your guard retention, you can actually track that progress. Instead of just judging your entire game based on a few rounds of rolling. Because when ego becomes the main measurement tool, it often slows your improvement instead of actually helping it. If you step back and look at everything that we talked about, you can see how these issues tend to stack on top of each other. So most blue belt plateaus aren't caused by just one big mistake. They usually are caused by small habits that really compound over time. So training volume drops. That leads to complacency. Complacency affects how you approach your training. And then you start measuring your progress in ways that make you feel like you're not actually improving. And when those things stack together, it becomes very easy to feel stuck. Now, one of the best ways to break out of this cycle is to add more structure and intentionality to your training. So at white belt, your job is very simple. Show up, listen, and then follow the process. But once you reach blue belt, the responsibility really starts shifting more to you. You have to begin taking ownership over your development. And if that's something that you're really interested in, you might be a great fit for my Jiu Jitsu Accelerator program. So inside that program, we start by assessing your Jiu Jitsu, identifying your biggest strengths and weaknesses, and then building a structured plan to help you improve faster and more effectively. So instead of just random training, you are training with clear direction and a purpose. I just opened up a new round of applications, so check out the link down in the description to apply. That's gonna wrap up this video. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure you leave this video a like. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that way you don't miss any future videos. I want you guys to take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.